भारतीय छात्र संसद उन्हें सलाम करती है, प्रणाम करती है।
Honorable dignitaries on the dais, respected organizers, distinguished guests, and the youthful participants in this third student parliament. Greetings to you all. I thank the organizers of this glittering student parliament for this privilege to speak in front of the very bright gathering. I feel truly overjoyed addressing the prospective leaders of this country. First of all, I wish to congratulate the MIT School of Government for initiating a leadership program in politics. There is invariably a training period for every new recruit in any job. I always wondered why there is no formal training for our political leaders. This is especially so in the backdrop of the changed parameters for political leadership. Dynasty, money, muscle power, crime record, and proximity to the top leadership are the factors of eligibility in politics today. At least to some extent, courses like this can arrest the tendency. Professionalism can be infused into politics with such courses. Therefore, more and more number of institutions like the School of Government should emerge to offer formal training to prospective political leaders, because the situation on the political front is not at all happy today. Our founding fathers had envisaged a true democracy that perfectly reflected the public opinion. But have we lived up to their expectations? Have we built a representative democracy? As Jai Prakash Narayan had said, mere casting of votes cannot be called as democracy. Our country has come to witness a situation where democracy means the rule of the political parties and their coteries of the day, not the rule of the people. Political parties have long ceased to represent the people's aspirations. Money and muscle power have further diminished the representative nature of the political parties. It is true that India has taken tremendous strides of progress, but the progress is in spite of its political leadership and not because of it. As at the time of independence, the country's literacy rate was just 12%. Today, India's literacy stands for 75%. It's a bit painful to note a country of this magnitude trails behind countries like Sri Lanka and Burma in terms of literacy. At the time of independence, there were 19 universities in the country. Today, there are more than 550 universities, including deemed and private universities. The number has risen, but the standards have fallen deep. The situation is truly pathetic. We are world's second largest country in terms of population, but we do not have a single university that ranks among the world's top 200 institutions of higher learning. Look at Singapore, a nation of just around 5 million people. The city-state has only around 20 public and private universities. Out of them, 2 universities are ranked among the world's top 50. Is it not something we should feel ashamed of? The appalling academic standards of our universities are self-evident. It hurts to note that India churns out lakhs of graduates and postgraduates with mediocre academic standards. We claim to have achieved food security. We take pride in claiming that India is the world's number 1 in milk production. The country in the world is second largest producer of wheat and paddy. It is the world's largest producer of several vegetables and fruits. Yet, why are a majority of our children still unable to afford a glassful of milk a day? Why are hunger and malnutrition still so widely prevalent in the country? Our country is endowed with extensive natural resources. It enjoys an enviable position in terms of extent of cultivable land. More than half of India's landed area is cultivable. This is much better than countries like the USA, where less than 20% of land is arable. India is the 4th largest producer of iron ore. Mother India is endowed with rich mineral wealth. Apart from coal and iron ore, in mineral resources, our mineral resources include natural gas, diamonds, petroleum, manganese, bauxite, mica, and several others. Countries with not even half of its natural wealth are prospering much better than India. India offers a bundle of paradoxes. Its mineral resources are rich, but industrial competitiveness is poor. The natural resources are abundant. The human resources are excellent. The climatic conditions are happy. Then, why does our country not progress as much as it deserves? Why so much hunger? Why so much poverty? Why so much unemployment? And why so much distress? These are the questions you should ponder over as the future leaders of this country. Go to the root of each one of the problems plaguing the country. Then you will find one thing: corruption, the all-pervasive and omnipotent. In the Committee of World Nations, we stand 94th in terms of corruption perception. Corruption is badly corroding India's systems. Our heads reel as we read the figures involved in the present-day corruption scandals. Lakhs of crores. The figures are growing truly astronomical. India won its freedom after an epic struggle. It took so many years and so many lives. Millions of heroes made the ultimate sacrifice for the sake of you and me, all of us. Have we proved worthy of their sacrifice? Has the freedom percolated to the grassroots level? What is the use of a freedom that does not give freedom from hunger and want? When we seek to raise these questions, our leaders divert our attention by taking up non-issues that tended to keep us divided. They have left people to suffer in poverty, illiteracy, and ignorance. We stand 43rd on the Global Hunger Index. Many smaller nations are doing much better than us in eradicating hunger. India ranks 112th in terms of per capita medical expenditure. We are making a mockery of the right to live, as only the rich and influential have access to proper medical care these days. But that does not affect our leaders as they are growing richer and richer. Moneyed people spend money to get party tickets and to influence the electorate. They get elected and make more money. They get busy with their own private business. Nothing can compel them to visit their electorate for the next 5 years. We have seen 15 elections in the past 6 decades. Flaws of the same kind have repeated themselves in each election. Our electoral system is caught in a deadly disorder. The first time ever we saw concrete measures towards electoral reforms was during Sri Sessions' stint as our Chief Election Commissioner. His moves to curtail the influence of money and muscle power, his measures to make the system more transparent and representative were lauded by the people, but not by the leaders. His reformatory moves were subsequently whittled away by the political class. It is unfortunate to note that to this day, the talk of electoral reforms remains confined to the rhetoric at the seminars and workshops. The present first past the post system needs to be amended to make our electoral system more representative. The reforms should make political parties to vie with each other to serve the people. Instead of feeling collectively responsible for the current hapless situation, political parties are blaming each other. The party in the opposition blames the ruling party for the prevalence of corruption, but it commits the same wrong after coming to power. This vicious cycle has to be brought to an end. The Constitution of India is one of the most progressive documents in the world. It is indeed alarming to note that governance has drifted away from the lofty constitutional goals. Parochial political gain and individual enrichment have become the most secret operational goals today. As a result of this drift, the governance has lost its capacity to take along our entire social system. The present mess has to be cleared. The spirit of our Constitution should prevail. Similarly, crime has become the most disturbing factor in our lives. Apart from making our lives miserable, criminals have come to dominate the political arena of our country. These muzzled men are able to roam freely with utmost impunity. Our law has ceased to deter them from habitual crime. They know it pretty well that our prosecution is successful only in 12 out of the 100 criminal cases that go to the court, while criminals with political links are able to move scot-free. Several lakhs of poor and ignorant under trials are rotting in prisons. Most of them have crossed their maximum period they have served in jail had they been convicted. Their plight goes unheeded. The political class has ruined the reputation of our institution, including the judiciary. Our leaders seldom think of easing the burden of our judiciary by appointing sufficient number of judges. India has 12 judges per million people, while in countries like the USA, this ratio is several times superior. There are around 150 judges for every million people in the US. No wonder pending cases have piled up into several crores in our country. Why does our leadership not give sincere thoughts to change the situation? Probably it has vested interest in the status quo. Our founding fathers had set up institutions by way of healthy checks and balances to ensure proper functioning of our democracy. But the institutions suffered erosion of public interest as parties in power intervene with the functioning of the constitutional bodies. Political considerations in crucial appointments have put a big question mark on the credibility of the institutions. If our democracy is to thrive and the people's rule to be upheld, we must make sure that there is no political meddling with the institutional functioning. Democracy demands accountability. Therefore, every institution affecting the common man's life should be made transparent. Every such institution should be made answerable to the people alone. These are all real issues that should be quickly resolved in the interest of the nation. There is an urgent need to overhaul our democracy. Our younger generation will suffer if things remain as they are. Evidently, the future of our youth is at stake. Time is up for our young people to arise and awake. As trustees of the nation's future, the youth should prepare themselves to build a better and brighter India. I hope the student parliament will send out a message that all hope lies with the young. It is for them to launch yet another struggle for freedom. They should become the harbingers of change. I want the youth of this nation to lead nothing short of a total democratic revolution. Jai Hind.
शुक्रिया रामोजी राव साहब।